Rounding off the first half of tonight's show will be Marlo Lacson, class of 2020. Marlo will be giving an original oratory, which is a speech that he had written himself. Marlo was a finalist at the Pennsbury and the Metro tournaments, and a quarterfinalist at the annual Harvard International, which is a really big achievement. His speech, called Rush Hour, sheds some light on our fast-paced lifestyles and gives us some ways to slow down. Ladies and gentlemen, Marlo Lacson, Rush Hour.
My first time behind the wheel, I crashed my car. Don't worry, no one was hurt. Nobody except a garage door. And my wallet when I had to pay to fix said garage door. And my feelings after the extensive but inevitable chewing out that I received soon after. Rewind a little bit. So I'm sitting in the driver's seat for the first time, and my brain is in full rush hour mode. In the long term, once I get my license, I can finally be free from the shackles of my parents' Toyota. In the short term, I haven't even left the driveway yet. God, why haven't I left the driveway yet? Well, if I never leave, I can never get my license, right? I shift gears, I hit the gas, and bang goes the car. And down go my spirits, as well as any chance of me leaving the house for the next month. Looking back on it now, I can see that my biggest mistake then was my impatience. My inability to be idle for even a little bit, out of fear of not getting my license in time. And while admittedly not everybody speeds through 2 weeks of driver's ed only to crash into a garage door, we are all guilty of being caught in that rush hour. And I don't mean this literally. The need for speed is everywhere you look. We honk a second after the light turns green, get aggravated over a slow internet connection, try the 1-week diet and quit the day after, whip out our phones with the slightest hint of silence. On paper, it makes sense. After all, who would want to be idle? Who would voluntarily want to spend their day doing something like, say, for example, sitting down for 10 minutes and listening to a high schooler lecture you on your life choices? The answer's obvious. Right? You may already be thinking, well, tell me what it is, but bear with me. For now, we're going to hit the brakes and find out how our intolerance for idleness has impacted us both mentally and physically. Next, we can shift gears and realize that maybe a little bit of break time isn't such a bad idea after all. And finally, after pinpointing ways to foster a healthy relationship with idleness, we can grab a hold of that steering wheel and drive our way down towards more healthy, more relaxed, and ultimately more fulfilling life. Now, like many other kids my age, I wanted to get my driver's license as quickly as possible for one main reason. The reason being so I could catch up with my friends. And as we already know, that may not have turned out quite as well as I'd hoped. But this mindset doesn't just apply to driving. See, so many of us are so afraid of falling behind to the point where we've deified the culture of the workaholic. I can't be the only one who hears people constantly bragging about how busy they are. For example, your friend comes up to you and he says, I was up so late working last night that I only got 5 hours of sleep. Someone else butts in saying, yeah, try working off of 3 hours. Meanwhile, the next guy over is already passed out at his desk. If we work hard enough, surely we can achieve the American dream. Until we realize that unfortunately, this dream becomes more of a nightmare when we take into account the consequences of overworking. Studies by the Institute of Occupational Health found that people who overwork themselves are much more likely to suffer from impaired sleep, memory loss, depression, diabetes, alcoholism, heart disease, and the list goes on and on. Equally as interesting, though, was the discovery that employees who work over 40 hours a week are much more likely to make mistakes. Mistakes which often take longer to fix than the additional hours worked. See, sometimes we forget that we're humans, not factories. Although it seems like we may be going down this road. The Neurosciences Institute of Stanford University describes our brains as being divided into 2 parts. The first part is the task-positive brain, the part that churns out productivity and gets things done. And then there's the task-negative side of our brain, the part most commonly associated with idleness, the part that allows us to brainstorm, daydream, and reflect. Too often, we see turning on the task negative side of our brain as activating time-wasting mode, when in reality, this could not be farther from the truth. Our task-positive brains crave results. They want instant feedback, instant gratification, now, now, now. This kind of behavior was studied by Walter Mitchell in what is now known as the famous marshmallow experiment, in which he sat down a child at a table and gave them a marshmallow, saying that if you can wait here for 15 minutes without eating this marshmallow, come back and I'll give you another one. Take your best guess as to what most of these kids did the minute he left the room. We all have our marshmallows in our lives, things that we can't wait for, things we just gotta have right now. In my case, my marshmallow came in the form of a driver's license. Your marshmallows may be anything from a promotion to a slice of pizza. But a common marshmallow that many of us share comes in the form of none other than entertainment. More specifically, digital entertainment. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella once stated that the true scarce commodity of the future won't be food. It won't be oil. It will be human attention. In his study monitoring the activity of Microsoft users, he found that the average American clicks, taps, and swipes on their phone over 2,500 times a day. He concluded that the average human attention span has fallen from 12 seconds in 2003 to 8 seconds in 2018. Even smaller than that of your average goldfish. Distractions are everywhere. There's always an email to check, a game to play, a show to watch. And don't get me wrong, I want to catch up on Game of Thrones as much as the next guy. But this habit of constantly filling our lives with noise can be dangerous. Because when our task-positive brain produces a reward, we get a shot of dopamine, the chemical that makes us happy. We want it again, and even faster this time. So as we keep looking for new and interesting things to satisfy our hunger for instant satisfaction, we get that dopamine shot again, and again, and again, and again, and again, until, for lack of a better term, it becomes an addiction. When we fill our days with working hours, and fill our non-working hours with distractions, the gears in our task-positive brains keep spinning and spinning and spinning until eventually they break down, taking our productivity as well as our well-being along with them. As Todd Henry, author of The Accidental Creative, puts it, by filling our lives with activity, we squeeze out all the space that we need to innovate and to think. We need to learn to manage our energy and create that space in our lives so that we can bring the best of who we are to what we do. Idleness forces us to be alone, to reflect, to just think, and to say no to distractions. When we learn to give our task-positive brains a rest every now and then, we can prevent burnout and be more productive when it's time to actually be productive. Christine Carter, author of The Sweet Spot, calls this strategic slacking. When you're so crazy busy, how can wandering off for walks and taking more breaks during the working day help us be more successful? Because when done properly, less really is. So, where do we start? I urge you to check out New York Public Radio's Bored and Brilliant experiment at WNPR.org. This week-long self-challenge gives us all the instructions that we need to start strategic slacking by learning to put away distractions, say no to instant gratification, take healthier breaks, and increase our tolerance for idleness. Now, I know what you're all thinking. In a world where noise is being launched at us from every direction, it seems near impossible to pull out of the rush hour that is our hectic everyday lives. But I'm not telling you all to make a pilgrimage to Tibet and live the rest of your lives in a monastery. Unless, of course, that's what you were already planning to do, in which case, you do you. But for the rest of you who don't plan on becoming monks, see if you can set aside just 30 minutes of your day for your task-connected brain. Doing something like driving to work without the radio turned on, going for a walk without your earbuds in, or even just sitting and daydreaming for a little while. When it comes to being productive, a little bit of slacking can go a long, long way. Because in the words of world-renowned philosopher, philanthropist, and life coach Winnie the Pooh, doing nothing often leads to the very best kind of something. I tried the board and brilliant challenge myself a few months ago, and to be honest, the first few days were torture. It felt like I was coming off a caffeine high that lasted for 16 years. But as I got further into the week, I felt myself getting more relaxed, more motivated, and most importantly, more focused when it was finally time to turn my task-positive brain back on. Hopefully, with this focus, I can get my driver's license someday soon. But I'm in no rush.